There's been a lot of mixed narratives on Geno Smith and if he's the guy for the Seattle Seahawks. And I think if you're a Seahawks fan, you've probably seen this clip this week of Mina Kimes on ESPN explaining that Geno Smith was not the problem with the Seahawks offense last year.
Here's a stat about Geno Smith that's going to blow your mind. On first down in the NFL, you know where he ranked in QBR? First. It wasn't Mahomes, It wasn't Lamar Jackson, it wasn't Brock Purdy, it was Geno Smith. But then on second down, that dropped to 14th, and third down, it dropped to 21st.
And there was a very interesting stat, which was on first down, Geno Smith had the highest QBR in the NFL, above Patrick Mahomes, above Josh Allen, above Lamar Jackson, everyone. But it got worse on second down, and it got worse on third down, which it got into the 20s, I believe. And so at the end of the day, was that a Geno Smith problem? Was that a protection problem? The reality is it's probably somewhere in between both. Now I'm here to say today, I don't think Geno Smith was the problem either. He does need to play a little more like 2022 if we want to be a very successful team. But I think it's very unfair to look at Geno Smith and say he was the issue for the Seahawks last year. He was more than capable. He had 3,624 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions with a 74.7 completion percentage. Now, last year, that probably put him more around the 14th to 20th best quarterback in the NFL compared to the year before. And that's where I'm getting to here. If we want to be a team that competes for the division, that makes the playoffs, that goes, instead of 9-8 again, goes 10-7, improve one win this year, we're going to need a couple things. One, Mike Macdonald. If he is the defensive guru, the defensive Sean McVay that many say he can be, we're going to need him to take our defense from a middle to bottom tier defense and bring us back up to the middle upper echelon. Instead of being average, those slight above average. If he can make it 10 to 12% better, all of a sudden a huge difference is happening. If that defense just slightly improves 10 to 12%. And then if you have on the other side a better offensive line this year, and that should not be debatable. If it's not, that either means there was injuries or the coaching staff's not doing the right job. Ryan Grubb, obviously from University of Washington, is coming in for the offensive coordinator, but Scott Huff is coming in as the offensive line coach. He has a responsibility to make this line better, and there should be no excuse. They drafted multiple offensive linemen this year. Abraham Lucas is supposed to be back, and Charles Cross is good. And you didn't draft a center, so that means you trust Olusegun Oluwatimi or maybe a Nick Harris. I don't know who exactly it is going to be. You brought back people in free agency on the offensive line. The teams tried their best to do everything from draft to trade to free agencies to whatever it may be to bring a better offensive line. So the coaching staff needs to find a way to make sure it's good. If you have an offense, like I said, if you have an offense of Geno Smith in 2022 form, he was 70% completion or 69.8, but same thing. 4,282 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 picks. If you get that type of year from Geno with a good offensive line, with another year of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and maybe Kenny McIntosh does something with the tight end room with Farrell Brown and the other pieces and Noah Fant, all the other pieces we have, with a wide receiver room of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba. If that offensive line's good and Geno's playing well with those pieces, there's no reason this offense shouldn't be good enough offense to go from a 9-win team to a 10-win team. And like I said, the defense has to do the same, obviously. But a lot of this is in Geno Smith's hands. And when I say it's in Geno Smith's hands, that doesn't necessarily, I think this is where a lot of fans get things mistaken. And I think a lot of people that hate on Geno Smith get this mistaken as well. Because if you go on Twitter right now, there's a half the population that's like, guys, Geno Smith's a great quarterback. Like, he might not be Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. He might not be in the upper echelon, top 8. Be somewhere in that 8 to 12 range. But then there's another half of people that think this guy sucks. Sam Howell should be the quarterback. We should have got rid of Geno last year. And I don't think that's fair either. We saw what happened. Let's please not forget our golden child, the best player in our franchise history, according to me. I know you could argue Walter Jones or other people, but Russell Wilson, to me, the quarterback that won the Super Bowl, he was the best player in franchise history in my eyes. He left, and it's been a disaster for him. He was a disaster 2 years in Denver, and now he's going to Pittsburgh. Not only did he go to Pittsburgh, right after he goes to Pittsburgh, they traded for Justin Fields to have him in case Russell Wilson's not good. His career's gone like this, while Geno Smith went from backup, not a good quarterback anymore, to finding a way to work his way back up. So let's not forget, this is not an easy game. It's not easy to be quarterback. Geno Smith is not bad. What Russell Wilson did the last 2 years, my favorite player, the best player in Seahawks history, what he did the last 2 years, that's bad football. When you go see a guy like Daniel Jones, that's bad football. Geno Smith has been perfectly either average or above average in his career. He's never been great. 2022, he was very, very above average, but not in the greatness spot yet. Last year, he was probably right at average. But this is if the line is there, if the line is good this year, Geno Smith should have no excuse because there's the weapons. There's the running backs. If there's offensive line, the receivers, the tight ends, I think he'll get back to 2022 Geno Smith around 70% completion, around 4,000 to 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns and 10 picks. If you do that and that defense comes alive with Mike McDonald, I'll say McDaniel. It's so hard with those two guys in this league. Mike McDonald, then there's no excuse for this team not to win 10 games. You're going to improve, right? I think that's the other thing is I'm not saying it's a disappointment if we go 9-8 because it's a first-year head coach. At the end of the day, if you have a winning record with a first-year head coach, you're probably in a very good place moving forward in the future. But I will say that going 10-7 should be very possible after having multiple 9-8 years. The team is supposed to be better than it was. I know there's some pieces that are confusing on the defense, some linebackers we haven't had before, some changes at safety, changes on the defensive line. I know there's a lot of changes, but there should be no reason that the defense is worse than it was last year and the year before. Pete Carroll's a great defensive coach, sure, but he's not supposed to be as good as what Mike McDonald can do. So that defense does what they do, and Geno Smith does what he does. No reason not to be 10-7, and make the playoffs. And before I get to the next part here, please, if you want to support me, support the brand, whatever it is, you can find all our Seattle stuff in the links in the description or at SeattleOnTap.com. At SeattleOnTap.com, we have merchandise. We have a lot of new ones coming out this week. We have some of our old Witherspoon stuff and a bunch of Seahawks stuff. We also have a bunch of new ones coming out for Seattle sports stuff. But we also have an NFL channel, an NBA channel, and other Seattle channels, all down below in the links in my description. So please check those out to support. As we wrap this up, I think the hardest part here at the end of the day is the division. Now, I don't know how great some of these teams are going to be. I'm not sure how great the Cardinals could be. But the problem is, and I think this is the only problem, and I think this could be the one problem with those fans that don't like Geno Smith as the quarterback. I think this is a fair complaint. I try my best not to be biased with the Seahawks. I have to agree when there's a fair complaint. If Matthew Stafford's healthy, Matthew Stafford is better than Geno Smith. Kyler Murray's healthy this year. He's a better quarterback than Geno Smith. Brock Purdy or Geno Smith? That's the confusing one. I don't know. I think if you put Geno Smith in that 49ers roster last year, they probably also would have gone to the Super Bowl. But if you got to be fair in this world, Brock Purdy took them to the Super Bowl. You got to say he has a slight edge right now, even though I think Geno Smith's better and might have led them to a Super Bowl also if he was on that 49ers team. But you got to say right now, the biggest concern on the Geno Smith front is he the fourth quarterback out of four quarterbacks in the division? And if the answer is yes, that's why some fans worry. Is this roster good enough to separate having the fourth quarterback in the division? Now, that might have been true with Brock Purdy, right? If you think Brock Purdy's worse than Geno Smith, then yes, sometimes you can have the fourth out of four, the worst quarterback in the division, and prevail and go to a Super Bowl when your roster's that good. But the problem is the Seahawks roster good enough to prevail if Geno Smith plays like the third or fourth quarterback out of four in the division? Or if he plays like the, 10th out of 12th best quarterback in the NFC or whatever, how many they are. I think it's 15 or 16. If he plays on the bottom half of that, are you good enough to prevail on this roster? I don't know if the roster's that good yet. But my hope is 2023 Geno Smith would not prevail a roster that's not good enough. But 2022 Geno Smith can elevate a roster. So my goal and my hope is Geno Smith hits those 2022 numbers. That makes us 10-7 on the year. And we have a very successful first year with the new head coach and a new era in Seahawks football. And at the end of the day, if you make the playoffs, that's a huge success. So I'm rooting for Geno. Stop saying he needs to go. I think he obviously deserves one more chance, one more year to see if can this work or not. You let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments and like and subscribe, and I'll be back very often. Now that OTAs are kicking back up, more stories are here. I'll be here a lot more often. I love y'all, and we'll see you next time. Peace.